All right, so are you ready to dive into Bitcoin? We're going deep today, exploring if it's really a safe investment.
Yeah, we've got a ton of articles and data to unpack just for you.
That's right. This is your personalized deep dive built from the sources you shared with us. So we're not just giving you some generic Bitcoin overview.
Nope, this is tailored just for you.
We'll be tackling some really intriguing questions like, is Bitcoin really digital gold?
And remember all those big names who said Bitcoin was going nowhere? Well, look at why they were so wrong.
Oh, yeah. And of course, we've got to talk about Bitcoin's crazy price history. You know, from those early days when people were buying pizzas with like 10,000 Bitcoins.
To those huge surges and dips that have been happening recently, it's been a wild ride.
Seriously, 10,000 Bitcoins for pizza, that's mind-blowing. But before we get to that story, let's start with the basics. What makes Bitcoin different from all those other cryptocurrencies out there?
Well, Bitcoin has a few key advantages. First off, it was the first cryptocurrency, the pioneer, that kicked off this whole revolution back in 2009.
So it's like the OG, the original gangster of crypto.
Exactly. That gives it a level of brand recognition and a network effect that's hard to beat. You know, like a limited edition sneaker. Scarcity drives up the value.
Right, so it's the one everyone knows and trusts. But beyond that, what makes it so secure? You know, for someone who's thinking about investing their hard-earned money.
Good question. Bitcoin operates on a decentralized network, which means no single entity controls it.
Ah, so no shady government or central bank calling the shots.
Exactly. And that's a huge part of its security. It makes it incredibly difficult for anyone to manipulate the system.
I like the sound of that. But how does that actually work in practice? What's the magic behind that decentralization?
That's where blockchain technology comes in. Imagine a digital ledger that records every single Bitcoin transaction ever made.
Okay, I'm picturing a giant spreadsheet.
Kind of, but here's the twist. This ledger isn't stored in one place. It's distributed across a vast network of computers around the world.
Wow, so it's like having a million accountants all verifying the same transaction simultaneously.
You got it. And because it's spread out like this, it's incredibly tamper-proof.
Yeah.
To change anything, you'd need to hack into a huge number of computers simultaneously.
That sounds pretty impossible. Okay, but I'm imagining all these computers buzzing away using a ton of electricity. Is Bitcoin good for the environment?
That's a great question, and it's a valid concern. We'll definitely dig deeper into Bitcoin's energy consumption later on.
Okay, good to know. We'll get to that. So this blockchain thing, it's obviously super important for Bitcoin, but is it used for anything else? It seems like it could have other applications.
Absolutely. Bitcoin was just the beginning. Blockchain technology has a whole universe of potential uses beyond cryptocurrencies. Think supply chain management, voting systems, digital identity verification.
Wow, it's like this Swiss Army knife of technology.
Yeah.
So much potential. But let's get back to Bitcoin specifically. You know, I keep hearing about those big names who are totally wrong about it. Like, didn't Warren Buffett call it rat poison squared?
He did say that, and while he's a legendary investor, even the best can miss the mark sometimes.
I guess so. What was his reasoning, though?
Well, Buffett's argument was that Bitcoin doesn't produce anything tangible, like a company making profits or a piece of land yielding crops. He saw it as purely speculative.
But isn't that true of gold, too? People value it because other people value it. It's not like it magically creates something either.
That's a great point. Bitcoin's value, like gold or even art, is largely driven by what people are willing to pay for it. And that willingness has gone way up, especially with big institutional investors getting involved.
So maybe Buffett, even though he's a financial titan, just didn't quite grasp the unique aspects of this new digital asset class. Were there any other big-name Bitcoin skeptics?
Oh, there were plenty. Peter Schiff, for example, a well-known gold bug, has been really hammering on Bitcoin.
What's he been saying?
Calling it a Ponzi scheme, predicting its inevitable crash. And it's interesting because his perspective is valid in the context of traditional finance, but it doesn't quite capture the whole picture of this new digital world.
Right, like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Maybe some folks were so focused on the old way of doing things that they missed the whole point of this new technology.
Absolutely. A rigid mindset can make it really hard to embrace new ideas, especially when they're totally disrupting the status quo.
Okay, but this is a good transition to another intriguing case. Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, what about him?
Oh, he famously called Bitcoin a fraud. Even threatened to fire any of his employees who were trading it.
Whoa, seriously, that's intense. But I have a feeling there's more to this story.
You bet there is. Since then, JP Morgan Chase has done a complete 180 and now offers Bitcoin services to its clients.
Talk about a change of heart. It's like he went from Bitcoin is a scam to, hey, everyone, get your Bitcoin here.
It seems like even Wall Street giants couldn't ignore the growing demand and realized they needed to adapt or get left behind.
So maybe Diamond's initial criticism was more about protecting JP Morgan's turf than really understanding Bitcoin's potential. It makes you wonder what other innovations might be facing resistance just because they're shaking things up a bit.
That's a really important point. A lot of times it's not about the logic or the tech itself, but about power dynamics.
Okay, let's bring in another big voice, Nouriel Roubini. He's the economist who predicted the 2008 financial crisis, right?
Yes, he had some harsh words for Bitcoin too.
What did he say?
Called it the mother of all bubbles and predicted a huge crash.
So he thought it would go all the way back down to zero.
Yep. Like a lot of traditional economists, he focused on Bitcoin's volatility and lack of intrinsic value, but didn't fully grasp its other potential benefits.
Right, like its role in financial inclusion or the fact that more and more institutions are starting to take it seriously. Okay, so we've got these big names who were wrong about Bitcoin. But let's be honest, looking at Bitcoin's price history, it has been a wild ride, from those pizzas to those record-breaking highs and dips.
Yeah, that's next on our list.
Yeah.
Buckle up, because we're about to dive into the roller coaster that is Bitcoin's price history.
All right, let's do it. From humble beginnings to those crazy surges, I'm ready for the ride. Okay, so you mentioned blockchain being the backbone of Bitcoin. I gotta admit, it still sounds kind of mysterious. Can we break that down a bit?
Absolutely. Let's demystify blockchain. It's really quite simple once you grasp the basic idea. Think of it like a giant shared spreadsheet, keeping track of every single Bitcoin transaction.
Okay, I can kind of picture that.
But instead of being stored on one central server, it's distributed across thousands of computers worldwide.
Ah, so it's like a global accounting system constantly being verified by this massive network. That makes sense.
Right. And each block in this chain contains a bunch of transactions linked together using cryptography. It's just a fancy word for complex mathematical formulas. Each block has a unique code, verifying its authenticity and connecting it to the previous block, so you end up with this unbreakable chain.
So it's like a digital paper trail where each entry is linked to the one before it. Any attempt to mess with one entry would disrupt the entire chain. That's pretty clever.
Exactly. And to add a new block to the chain, it needs to be verified through a process called mining.
Mining, like digging for gold.
Sort of. In this case, miners are using powerful computers to solve complex mathematical problems. The first one to solve it gets to add the next block to the chain.
Ah, and I'm guessing they get rewarded for their effort.
You bet. They get rewarded with Bitcoins. It's this whole intricate process that keeps the system secure and running smoothly.
Okay, so it's like a competition to solve these puzzles, and that's what keeps everything in check.
Exactly. It makes it virtually impossible for anyone to manipulate the blockchain because they'd have to control a massive amount of computing power across the network.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. But is Bitcoin the only thing that uses this blockchain magic? It seems like such a versatile technology.
Oh, it's just the beginning. Blockchain has the potential to revolutionize so many industries. Imagine supply chains that are completely transparent, voting systems that can't be rigged, your digital identity totally under your control.
That's mind-blowing. It sounds like we're just scratching the surface of what's possible.
Absolutely. But let's zoom back in on Bitcoin and its real-world impact. How do you see this digital currency shaking things up on a global scale?
Yeah, that's a big question. Some people see it as this huge threat to the traditional financial system. Others think it could lead to more innovation and financial inclusion. What's your take?
It's both, really. It's a double-edged sword. Bitcoin's decentralized nature could definitely challenge the power that central banks have over monetary policy. It could also make it harder for governments to track and prevent illicit activities.
Right, like money laundering. So governments might not be too happy about losing some control.
There's definitely some pushback from authorities. But on the other hand, Bitcoin could empower individuals by giving them more control over their own finances, reducing their dependence on banks. Imagine a world where you don't even need a bank account to participate in the global economy.
That's a game changer, especially for people in developing countries who don't have easy access to banks.
Exactly. And think about its impact on global trade and remittances. Sending money across borders could become much easier and cheaper.
So it could be a powerful tool for economic empowerment, breaking down barriers.
Precisely. But it's still early days. It's a financial experiment in action. We'll have to see how it all plays out.
Okay, so lots of potential benefits, but what about the ethical side of things?
That's an important conversation to have. One concern is Bitcoin's energy consumption. Mining, as we discussed, uses a lot of computing power, which requires a lot of energy.
So is Bitcoin bad for the environment?
It's a valid concern, but the Bitcoin community is actively working on solutions.
Hmm.
There's a big push for more energy-efficient mining methods and transitioning to renewable energy sources.
Oh, that's good to know. So they're taking it seriously.
Definitely. Another concern is the potential for illicit activities, because transactions are pseudonymous and decentralized.
Right, like you mentioned before, money laundering, things like that.
Exactly. But it's worth noting that cash is used for those things too. And in many ways, Bitcoin transactions are more traceable than cash. Law enforcement is developing ways to track them and identify criminal activity.
So it's like a constant back and forth, like cat and mouse game.
You could say that. There's still a lot to figure out about regulating and managing this technology responsibly. And then there's the question of accessibility.
Meaning not everyone can easily use Bitcoin?
Right. It can be quite intimidating for newcomers. It requires some technical know-how.
That's a good point. We don't want a system where only the tech-savvy people benefit.
Exactly. But there are efforts to make it more user-friendly. New apps and platforms are making it simpler to buy, sell, and use Bitcoin, even for everyday people.
So it's not just for the tech wizards anymore.
Exactly. And we can expect even more innovation to make it more accessible to everyone.
This is all fascinating, but it is a lot to take in. We've gone from the tech stuff to the global impact to the ethical considerations.
You're right, we've covered a lot. But the main takeaway is that Bitcoin is more than just a digital currency. It's a disruptive force that's challenging the way we think about money, finance, even governance.
Absolutely. And while there are still a lot of unknowns, one thing's for sure, Bitcoin is here to stay.
It's going to continue shaping the future in ways we can't even imagine yet. Now, let's get back to your initial question, is Bitcoin a secure investment? In the final part of our deep dive, we'll address that head on.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's get to the part where we talk about making some money. Okay, let's get down to business. Is Bitcoin really a secure investment? I mean, we've talked about all the potential and the ups and downs, but what about my money? Is it safe?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it's smart to think about security with any investment. From a tech perspective, Bitcoin is incredibly secure. That blockchain we talked about makes it almost impossible to hack or counterfeit.
That's good to hear. But I'm still a bit wary, Are there any vulnerabilities I should be aware of, even if it's not about the system being hacked directly?
You're right to be cautious. The system itself might be secure, but human error is always a factor.
What do you mean by that?
Think about it this way. You wouldn't leave your house key under the doormat, right? Same goes for Bitcoin. You have to be really careful about how you store it. If you lose access to your digital wallet or forget your password, your Bitcoins are gone. Poof.
Yikes. Okay, that's a bit scary. So choosing a safe and reliable digital wallet is super important. It's like picking the right bank for your money.
Exactly. Do your research. Look for reputable wallets with strong security features. You might even consider a hardware wallet, which stores your private keys offline. It's like a safe deposit box for your digital gold.
Hardware wallets, got it. What about scams? I've heard stories about people losing their Bitcoin to online tricks.
Yeah, you've got to be careful. There are definitely scammers out there trying to steal your Bitcoin. Be wary of anything that seems too good to be true. Don't click on suspicious links or give out your personal information.
So it's like those emails saying you won the lottery, but then you have to give them your bank details to get the money.
Exactly. Always double-check everything. Look for secure websites and be skeptical.
Okay, so we've covered the security basics, but what about the whole investment side of things? I'm hearing mixed messages about Bitcoin. Is it digital gold or just another bubble waiting to burst?
That's the big debate, isn't it? Bitcoin has definitely shown incredible growth, but it's also been very volatile.
Yeah, we saw that roller coaster rides. How can you even call it a secure investment when it's so unpredictable?
Well, that's the thing. Bitcoin isn't for the faint of heart. It's high risk, high reward. You need to be comfortable with the volatility and be prepared for those ups and downs.
So what are some strategies for someone who's willing to take on that risk? How can you maximize those gains while minimizing the losses?
One approach is swing trading, where you try to capitalize on those short-term price movements. You buy low, sell high, ride the waves.
But that sounds pretty intense.
It is. It requires a lot of knowledge and a high risk tolerance.
Yeah.
It's not for beginners. Now, if you want a more conservative approach, There's dollar cost averaging.
That's that.
You invest a fixed amount of money at regular intervals no matter what the price is doing.
So you're not trying to time the market perfectly. You're just spreading out your investment over time.
Exactly. It helps to average out your purchase price and can lead to more stable returns in the long run.
Got it. Swing trading for the risk takers, dollar cost averaging for the more cautious investor. What about those HO dealers? I keep hearing that term thrown around.
Ah, yes, the HO dealers. They are the true believers. They see Bitcoin as more than just a digital currency. It's a revolutionary technology that will change the world. They're in it for the long haul. They don't sweat the daily ups and downs.
So they're betting on the big picture, not the short-term noise.
Precisely. They believe Bitcoin will ultimately be worth more than gold. They're investing in a new financial system.
Wow, it's like investing in the early days of the internet. You know, believing it would change everything, even when other people were skeptical.
That's a great analogy. But remember, even with all the optimism, there are no guarantees. Bitcoin is still an emerging asset.
Right, we've got to stay grounded here. No matter how exciting the potential, any investment comes with risks. You have to do your homework, know your own risk tolerance, and never invest more than you can afford to lose.
Absolutely. Those are wise words. Be informed, be realistic, and don't get swept up in the hype.
Well, I think we've covered a lot today, from the blockchain to the potential global impact, and even how to approach Bitcoin as an investment.
It's been quite a journey. Hopefully, our listener feels more informed and ready to explore this exciting new world.
Absolutely. This deep dive has been incredibly insightful, and I hope it sparked a curiosity to keep learning about Bitcoin. This is just the beginning.
Stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking questions. Who knows what the future holds for Bitcoin?
Well said. Until next time, folks, keep on diving.